but it's a true statement. I am working on a JB motor. I'll tell you what I can show you. Here's what I can show you. This is not the JB motor. This is just a tribute to the best motor in the world. No, you know, I say that. That's a Tenacious D song, tribute. It kind of is true, though, because I got the idea. People always said, hey, when are you going to make a motor? And I said, you know, I'm not going to make something just to make it. I'm going to make something when I have something to contribute. And after I flew the EFA 2407 motors, I was so blown away with their performance that I tried to reach out to EFA and say, hey, can we do, like, I like this motor so much, can we do something together? And unfortunately, EFA kind of went out of business. And so then I said, okay, well, Luminaire, can we make a motor that's kind of like basically not exactly a copy of the EFA 2407, because there are a few things I would change, but it was inspired by the EFA 2407. So in a sense, it is a tribute to the best motor in the world. And this is not the motor. This is a prototype that they sent me that turned out to be the wrong KV. And this is actually a really fantastic 6-inch motor. But I don't want to make a 6-inch motor. So I have like 10 of these motors. 4 are on a quad right now, and they will never exist again. But this is something like the motor might look when it comes out, and I hope it's going to come out soon. So yeah, the biggest holdup on the motor right now, you guys are going to laugh. They said, what color do you want the motor to be? And I said, well, you know, I like purple and yellow. And they were like, well, that's a little bit weird. And I was like, hey, you asked. And they said, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it. The problem is this purple color is given the guy when they laser etch the markings on the bell, and the purple color is giving the laser etching guys fits. It's not. That's the holdup right now. I haven't even gotten a production sample of the motor yet because they can't get the etching to work right. So that's what we're waiting for right now. But that's going to be coming soon. It's going to be a 2407 size. It's going to be around 2400 kV. And the goal of the motor is to be able to fly heavier props in freestyle while still having smooth performance and good prop wash handling, because the 2407 are going to just be so freaking torquey and powerful that you won't have to run like a 5x4.3. You can run a 50/50 or a 5x4.8 and still have awesome thrust, but also smooth performance. That's what I experienced with the EFA and what I wanted to try and something unique that I felt I could bring to the market now that EFA was gone. Otherwise, I would just say buy EFAs, but they don't exist anymore. So, yeah, strangers have the etched part gold and the other part purple. It's true. You could do that. At this point, the guys from Get FPV have been working on it. I said to them, I said, look, guys, it doesn't have to be purple. We could go. And they were like, no, we'll get it. It's okay. And what football team is it? Is it the Gators? I don't know, because I don't really follow football very much. But somebody said, oh, so you're a such and such fan. And I was like, no, not really. Those are just some colors I like together. Shice asks in the Discord. The patrons are getting their money's worth in the Discord, because like Shice has asked like 5 questions. Keep it up, Shice. I'm not telling you to stop. Can you do a spec build with the JB2407 and the JB stack, ideally with a hyper low CG frame? I am going to do that. Now, hang on. Pause that question, because speaking of spec builds, this is a spec build that I am working on now. And this is, so it's got the Rotor CL1 frame, the Holy Bro stack, and I am doing the most detailed series of build videos I've ever done to try and help people who are total noobs in the hobby get into the hobby and be able to build a quadcopter. But after that process is done, I am thinking about doing a spec build. I've always resisted doing a spec build of my own product because I don't want to like, I like a lot of different products. But if I have a motor and I have a flight controller and I have an ESC out, I maybe should do a spec build, and I'm thinking about doing that once the motor comes out. And I don't know what the frame is going to be, but I got to tell you. Where is it? Here it is. I got to tell you guys, I'm really impressed. This is the Catalyst Machine Works Smooth Operator, and I'm really impressed with it. And I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do for the spec build, but I've always flown the Chameleon TI and the Rooster, and I don't know. Maybe I'm ready for something just a little tighter. I don't know. It's the Smooth Operator is definitely tighter. It's not as tight as it seems like, because actually this plate comes off, and you have the bottom plate is hollow here, so you have a little more room than it looks like you have. But I don't know. Think about it. Cameron, I don't have a hyper-low CG. Let's look at it. Let's look at the hyper-low CG. Can I get a bigger picture? There we go. Give me a bigger picture. I see. I see. Interesting. Next, please. So the hyper-low CG is using a similar technique to the Smooth Operator. By the way, you can't say Smooth Operator. You have to say it like the song, you know, Smooth Operator. You have to hit that ray. You cannot say it at Smooth Operator. It uses a similar technique to the Smooth Operator in that it's putting the arms inside the bottom plate. That takes up room inside the stack, but it also centralizes the weight and gets the weight closer to the motor line. In fact, I see a lot of similarities here, to be honest. Battery straps, good. Yep. Interesting. Here's the bottom. And one of the things, now, is that a 20 millimeter or is that 36 millimeter? It almost looks like it might be 20 millimeter. Maybe it's 36. One of the things about these builds is that they do have a lot more sort of pieces of hardware. And it's one of the things I really like about the Chameleon TI and the Rooster. Well, the Rooster less so because it has separate arms. Is they have relatively few pieces of hardware. One of the things the Smooth Operator does is it has TPU printed sort of cushions or bumpers. And basically the front end camera is connected to the body. Well, you can't, it's difficult to show on camera, but it's connected with a TPU part that slots in and essentially gives a little bit of cushioning and vibration protection. So, interesting. Yeah, I don't hate it. Hyper low. I don't hate it. Anyway, lots of different frames out there. Let's see. Catalyst Machine Works is awesome, says Rotor Ryan. And Armatan told a few of us Vegas guys to screw. I don't know what that means. Yeah, I think if I were to do a spec build with a Smooth Operator, one of the things that I've, as I get more into the hobby and I get to know the people, like you do some projects because you want to work with somebody as much as because you like their product. So I kind of would like to find an excuse to do more work with Neil Whiteley, who Catalyst Machine Works is a great company, and Neil's a great guy, and that's almost as much a motivation to do something with him as the goodness of his frame, although he does have a good frame. Take a look. MC Creation says, take a look at the Transframe Freedom V2. Let's do that. Transframe Freedom V2. Okay. Transtech Freedom V2. Yeah. So interesting. I don't love this front end. I'm not sure why. Can I get this bigger? No, it doesn't get bigger. Just this, I'm suspicious of where this attaches. It's very similar to how the Rooster attaches, doesn't it? Interesting. Yeah. I see the similarities to the Rooster, but it doesn't have the slanted top here, so where does the GoPro go? You must need a 3D printed GoPro mount or something. Everybody's doing these squashed builds. How does it? Does it got one screw? Is it literally one screw and then it slots in here? That's interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now the floss style. Turtle FPV asks about the floss style. Now that you know what? That's clearly okay. I see. No. Oh, give me a break. Don't do that. Don't do that, Banggood. No. Where's the real? The Hyperlight floss style. Yeah. Now Bob Ruge's frames are great designs. I have never gotten into the floss because I've always sort of mentally thought of them as a racing frame. The original floss was very, very popular racing frame, still is. They always just for freestyle, they feel a little bit too sparse to me. I don't know why. I could be wrong. Maybe if I built one, I'd love it. Everybody who flies them really seems to like them, but they just feel a little bit too sparse to me. And I just feel like I want a little bit more there. I don't know. It could just be a preconception that I shouldn't do. So let's see here. Rotor Ryan gives $10 in the super chat and asks, I'm considering running beta flight on a race flight, Millivolt and Revolt. Race flight uses 2 TX pads for crossfire and 2 RX pads for S-Port. So how do I hook up my crossfire and cam control after switching to beta flight? Ryan, I don't know the answer to that. I appreciate you giving another $10. I don't know the answer to that. I know that when you run beta flight on Revolt, there are some hoops you have to jump through to get everything working right. Race flight, it doesn't really use 2 TX pads for crossfire. That can't be. I think it's doing some tricks where actually it's using an RX. I mean, it says TX on the silk screen, but it's really an RX. And so the question would be how Betaflight maps those resources. But I got to tell you, whenever I hear about people using Betaflight on a Revolt, I'm like, why? I mean, did you already own the Revolt, but you kind of didn't like Flight 1, so you wanted to switch? Okay, I could see it. But don't buy a Revolt just to put Betaflight on it. It's not designed for that, and it's a little kludgy to get it working, and it just is a bit of a hassle. For $10, I wish I could give you a better answer, Ryan. I don't know the answer to that, though. Let's see here. What do you do for hot motors, asks Hogan. What do you do for hot motors? Okay, so if you have hot motors, the first thing to ask yourself is, am I overpropping my motors? Now, this is not very likely on a 5-inch quad because our 5-inch motors are just so beefy these days. They can handle almost any 5-inch quad or a prop you put on there. But you see it more often if you've got like 1104 motors and you're 1104 7500 kV. You're trying to run tri-blade 3-inch props. Well, maybe you do a little better on 2.5-inch props or bi-blade props. So if you're overpropping, you're going to get hot motors. And the key characteristic is all motors are going to be hot, all of them, right? Because they're all going to, usually the back motors are a little hotter because they're working a little harder. Another thing to check is the motor screws. So if the motor screws are too long and touch the windings, the motors will get super hot. You may just destroy the motors, but depending on how bad you've damaged the winding, you get current flowing from the motor winding through the screw, through the frame, and back to ground, and the motor will get hot. Now, if you use the same screws on all the motors, you could have this happening on all the motors. Sometimes you'll have it just on one motor. This is especially likely to be true if you have just one motor that's getting super hot. Maybe your screws were slightly too long and touched the winding. The way to check that is that you do a continuity test with your multimeter, test the screw, and then over to the ESC, test where the motor wire touches the ESC, test that solder joint, test for continuity between the screw and the motor wire. And if the continuity exists, then you have a problem. And the other thing you can do is just back all your screws out like, you know, a turn and see if the hot motor goes. You're not going to fly that way, but just spin the motors or something on the ground and then see if they stop getting hot. So the answer to that is to use shorter screws. I prefer not to see, well, this isn't a great example. See, if you look at this, you can't see this motor. This motor has a ton of space between the base and the windings. So there's just really not a lot of risk there. But on a lot of motors, the windings are relatively close to the base, and even if you're sticking out by maybe a millimeter or two, you could potentially touch the winding, especially where the motor wires exit the motor. If you look at the back side of the motor, there may be several millimeters of space, and there's no chance. But where the motor wires exit the motor, then they could touch and cut there. The other thing then, if you've eliminated those, is to check your filtering and your D gains. So in Betaflight, if you lower the cutoff frequency of your gyro and your D-term low pass, you'll filter more, and that'll cool your motors down. If you lower your D gains, you'll cool your motors down, and sometimes that can be what you need to do. So let's see. The X-Hover, Spudnik says, the X-Hover Stingy is the only 5-inch bind and fly freestyle quad I've found. Well, let's just give the X-Hover Stingy a shout out while we're here. The bind and fly, for real? Did this X-Hover build a bind and fly? Wow. I did not know that. Look at this, guys. You can fly. You can have X-Hover build you a Stingy. Oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that cute? That's nice. That's not the props he flies. But hey, what are you going to do? I don't think that's the only one, though. Like, I would put the Holy Bro Copus 2 up. No offense, not trying to say it's the same quality as the venerable Stingy, but I'd say that's a freestyle quad. I mean, you could call it a racing quad, but it'll carry a GoPro no problem. It is bottom mount battery. Some people would say if it's got a bottom mount battery, it's not a freestyle quad. If you feel that way, I mean, I guess you could put a top mount battery on here. Not with a GoPro, not easily. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. John Doe, is Betaflight 4.0 out? No, John. Betaflight 4.0 is scheduled for January or ish. You're hearing about it because they're doing exciting things and everybody likes to nerd out, but it's not like 3.4 and 3.5, which came within weeks of each other. No worries there. Yeah, Mach 3D in the Discord asks, what about the Hawk 5? The Hawk 5 could be a freestyle frame. It flies good freestyle. I think it's designed a little more for racing, but Hawk 5, good freestyle frame for sure. Invert FPV asks, what are your thoughts on the Fat Shark T2? The Fat Shark T2 is a remake of the Fat Shark HD2. Yeah, Dominator HD2. When the HDO came out, everybody said, you know, the HDO is nice, but the field of view is a little small. I wish I had the great big 50-degree field of view. Well, not everybody said that. Some people said that. And Fat Shark went, okay, put your money where your mouth is. So now for $400, you can get a Fat Shark Dominator HD2 with a 50-degree field of view and the fuzzy edges that everybody... Here's the thing. When the HD2 came out, people were like, oh, my God, fuzzy edges. Oh, Fat Shark, you're the worst. And then the HD2 came out with a... Well, then the HD3 came out, and then the HDO came out with a smaller field of view and a much better image quality. And people said, wow, Fat Shark, we really like the HD2. And I can kind of understand why some of the Fat Shark guys might be like, guys, what do you freaking want? But you can get the HD2. I'm torn on it. I'm torn. You know, it's $400. It's got a great big screen. I do like my HD2s. But if someone said to me, which should I buy today, the HD2, the HD3, or the HDO? Well, the HDO is $100 more. And between the HD2 and the HD3, I think it depends a lot on your eyes and how close you are to the optimal IPD for the Fat Shark goggles. Because if your eyes are particularly wide or particularly narrow, the fuzzy edges are going to get you with the HD2s. Yeah, it's very good that Fat Shark has decided to offer them to people who want to buy them, so that's nice. Ian Paluska says, should I get a Luminaire Alpha all-in-one? I